Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another, and this time very special edition of the Stern Spiel. I'm Charlie Stern, and my daughter is Veronica Stern. Say hello, Veronica.
Hello.
And what we talk about on this father daughter podcast is all about, to a large extent, it's about Veronica's musical theater journey. Veronica's a working actress out there in the field on a Broadway tour. But today we have something a little different for everybody, which is welcome to our special guest, Kim Bixler. Hello, Kim.
Hello, hello.
So, Veronica, did I tell you about this play that I saw last weekend?
You briefly mentioned it, but why don't you give a little review or I guess synopsis of what it was?
Okay, so Kim is the writer behind this play called Barba. But Kim, I'm going to do my best to give a very brief synopsis, but then I want you to kind of fill in the cracks, okay? And this is eye level now because I went to see the play, and this is one individual's impression of it. Barba is a story of a guy named Fernando Barba who came up with this very clever musical program that is called Brazilian Body Percussion. And I had no idea what that was, but it you know what it reminds me of a little bit, Kim? Do you remember an artist by the name of Bobby McFerrin?
Yes, and they have performed with him before.
Oh, okay, that's interesting to me because Bobby
Yes.
McFerrin did
Hmm.
do some similar things, not exactly the same, but it's this, tapping on your chest and snapping fingers and a whole bunch of different things that collectively make these amazing sounds. And it's very musical and it's very rhythmic and it's very interesting. And the play is a story of this guy's life and his musical journey. And Kim Bixler, you are a writer and a playwright now and a lyricist. Tell us a little
Yes.
bit about your background and then tell us a little bit about Barba.
So I live in Los Angeles right now, outside of Los Angeles, Manhattan Beach, technically, and I went to college. I went to Cornell University, and I graduated with a degree in political science. So obviously, this is a complete, you know, trajectory to end up being a musical theater writer. I wrote a book right after graduating, and then I wrote a couple other books, and then I'd edit books.
And what were the
And
books that you wrote about? I'm just trying to
well, the
connect the
first
dots
book,
here.
the first they were all almost all nonfiction or children's books, but I wrote books about Cornell and Ithaca. One was like a guidebook. One was a little book right before the Olympics in Atlanta. We used to live in Atlanta. I wrote a book about cigars. I wrote someone else's ideas. I was
Hmm.
editing that book, and then my latest book is I grew up in a Frank Lloyd Wright house in Rochester, New York. It was built around the same time as the Roby House in 1908, and I wrote that book, and then I started doing speaking engagements all over the country. And then I decided to write a musical about Frank Lloyd Wright.
So this is a
And
very eclectic background from Rochester and a
yes,
Frank Lloyd Wright house
yep,
to editing books about cigars. You went to Cornell at some point, I'm
yes.
gleaning.
Hmm.
And tell us how you wind up, writing a play. Had you
Yeah.
written a play before? How did that come about?
Well, what happened too is that during COVID, I mean, I had written the musical. The Frank Lloyd Wright, had done a majority of that, and I lost my collaborator. And then I ended up taking all these classes. I mean, the world closed down for some people, but it opened up for me because there were no geographic boundaries. I could take classes at Berkeley Rep. I could take classes. I was doing things in Iowa. I was doing things at Northwestern. I could do whatever I wanted and learn
Remote
more about the
classes.
craft. Yeah, I
Right.
could learn about the craft of musical theater writing. And then, of course, I thought, well, I really need some collaborators and I need to learn more. And so I decided on a whim to apply to NYU's graduate musical theater writing program at 52. And I thought, there's no way they're going to accept me because I'm old. And because I just didn't know. I thought this is crazy, and I got accepted. And the way that the program works is, in order to get into the program after you make it through the initial application, you get paired randomly with somebody, and then your audition is you have to do a scene and a song, and you present it in front of everybody.
Hmm.
And then those are the people that get selected. And I got paired with this Brazilian named Carlos Bauzys from Rio. Of course, they said, we're going to pair people. I'm sorry, he was not from Rio, from Sao Paulo. And they said, of course, we're going to pair people with geography in mind. And I was like, well, I'm not sure if NYU's strong suit is geography because LA and Sao Paulo, there was like a 5 hour time difference. So poor Carlos, after a day of interviews, and this was all online because of COVID. Apologize, I
Hmm.
forgot to say that part.
Now, this guy
So
Carlos, he was in the program as well,
he ended up being in the program, but this is how we got into the
and
program.
that's the pairing. I understand.
Yeah, and we
Okay.
got paired. And then the fascinating thing is the song that we did is really the basis of the whole musical. This that started it. So what we wrote
Wow.
together at that time was this echo song. Do you remember that song about it's called Just This Moment with the echoes? It was
Mm-hmm.
on the waterfall, and
Yes.
and basically I had looked up Portuguese idioms, and one of them is agua pela barba, which means water off a beard. Barba
Hmm.
means beard, and and so he had just told me the story of his dear friend, Fernando Barba, who had just passed away about 2 months before that. And he was the co-musical director of the Barba 2 case, which means Barba's Drummings. And he told me this guy's life story, and I thought, whoa, that's amazing. And then for your master's thesis, you get paired with someone in the program. We both, had each other on the list. The faculty pairs you, and we were paired together. And so for our second year, our final year of the program, we worked full time on writing Barba, the Brazilian Body Percussion Musical.
Wow.
So that's a long and winded story, but I'm telling you, I it's he's a dream. I mean, Carlos is a dream. So the program was fascinating because you work with everybody in the program, but we just really clicked, and we had a really great story. That was
Yeah.
really his story. So that's the
So,
story of that. Hmm.
Veronica, did you have something?
I was gonna say, so did you grow up enjoying musical theater, or how exactly did you land on, oh, I want to go to NYU and get a master's in musical theater writing? It's so specific.
So I was the kid who was in a lot of musicals when I was younger in
Mm-hmm.
Rochester, New York. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was Maria in West Side Story. I was in like Hansel and Gretel. And then I remember I went into I was in a competition when I was in eighth grade, I think, or ninth grade. And I completely forgot my lines. I like, that was it. Complete stage fright. That was the end of my musical theater career. I was done. Like, I'm done. And then I just had no confidence in doing it. But I loved musicals. I mean, I appreciated musicals. I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know, like, I think it was just from exposure to seeing musicals and all growing up. And then, of course, I met and married somebody who loves watching musicals. So my husband and I would go, like, if we went to New York, we'd be like, Friday night, two on Saturday, see if we can see two on Sunday. Like we would squeeze
Right.
in as much as we possibly could. So I really
Mm.
started learning. I knew a lot about musicals just from watching them, but I also fully appreciate, Veronica, like what you can do, because I can't I can't get up there and sing and perform,
Right.
but to see somebody actually say the words and read and sing what I've written is it's pretty magical. And that's a rare occurrence for a lot of writers. And the fact that
Yeah.
it happened last weekend is pretty remarkable. So that was my yes.
So musical theater
Hmm.
was in your blood,
Hmm.
and you were a writer. So writers know how to write things, and you had to figure out how to, I guess, what's the word, morph your writing abilities to the musical theater format. But you found a way to do that, and then along comes this other very talented person who has this story, and you were able to sort of bring it to light. Tell us a little bit about that process. Like, how did you imbibe that story and then turn it into something that would work in a theater? How does that work?
So this was a pretty unusual one, like because Fernando Barba, before he passed away, he had written his autobiography with his sister.
I see.
And so it was amazing to have the source material. Now, when
Okay.
we first started writing the musical, The book was not written in English, but it was translated in English shortly after, and then I was able to read it. I thought this is amazing. Then I went to Brazil and I met
Mm.
the whole family, and I and then we began doing interviews of everybody who was involved in the story, and then and even met some of the Barbatukes, which is fascinating because they have a huge body of music, and his parents have the rights to their music, or a lot of their music. So we had to, ours was unusual as I call this a student project, which is
Yeah.
already kind of way exceeded that. But the fact that we had to get book rights, and then we have to get music rights.
Hmm.
So, and then we had the interesting task of figuring out how Carlos and I worked together. And
Right.
we did a real combination of different things. So sometimes it was lyrics first. Sometimes it was music first, his own music. Sometimes it was the Barbatuques music. So you have the established music of this group, which is very complex. And then I'm trying to write lyrics backwards. And when people say, imposter syndrome, I just kind of went in there and I was like, I'm just going to pretend that I know everything. And I just like brute
So,
forced everything to try and figure out
so,
how to do it.
so
Hmm.
Kim,
Wow.
so the story that you're telling is there was more than one thing that you did here. So you were the lyricist, but you're also the
Hmm.
writer of that story, right? So you had to
Right.
adapt an autobiography to become a
Yep.
play. That makes you a playwright. You're a
Yep.
lyricist because I gathered you took songs. Now these songs, if I recall correctly, they're performed in Portuguese, right?
Yes, some of them are, and now they're not. Now they're in English, you
Okay,
know.
so these
Mm.
English adaptations, you worked on those?
Well, the Portuguese, it's usually, some of them were just vocalizations that aren't even
Hmm.
really Portuguese words.
Right.
Some of them are Portuguese words, but not really, it's not like a story. Like that's the difference between like a songwriter. Songwriters, they, you can write a song, but musical, and Veronica would know this, you have to go from A to D. Like a musical song has to take you on a journey, and can't end up where you start. It has
Right.
to move the story forward. It has to propel you through the story. And so I would just listen to all of their tracks and figure out what that sounds like to me, and then kind of set scenes based on it. Or I would have a scene, and then I would try and figure out what it is. But everything goes somewhere. It's not
Right.
from the beginning to the end. So it's a bit of a challenge. It's not like normal songwriting at all, And then yet they still want you to do something catchy. And then I'm partnered with a very high level composer, um, Carlos, who
Mm.
is trained as a musical theater director and a arranger and an orchestrator and a composer. And so he's like, oh, song form. We have to make sure we follow like really precise song form. So
Right.
And
So
my
I'm
head exploded.
wondering when I'm wondering more about your time at NYU with this musical
Hmm.
theater writing masters. So you went to audition for it, you were paired with Carlos. And is
Hmm.
that where Barba started, or did Barba come about once you were in the program and like learning about how to be a musical theater writer?
It came much later. So the first year of the program, there are in the program there tends to be, they split you into words people and music people.
Hmm.
And there's between
Okay.
30 and like 34 people in the program. That's it. That get accepted into the
Wow.
program. And so in the first year of the program, you work with everybody in the program. They pair you
Hmm.
together. Like this week, you're doing an AABA song. This week, you're going to watch a movie and you have to write a scene based on that movie. This week,
Hmm.
you have to do something with only perfect rhymes. This time, you're going to look at a photograph. This time, you're going to do a podcast. We had to do like a puppet show. We had to do all these crazy things. And then you had to do a rewrite. And at the end of the first year of the program, then you write your top 10 people that you want to work with, and you have to write what you would work on with them. You have to come up with at least two ideas. So it's a
So
huge,
people in
almost
the
like document.
program?
Everybody, yes, you write down who you want to work with and what you would work on with them, and then the faculty sits down and decides who's going to work with whom.
Wow. So are most people in the program hoping to write Broadway musicals, or what is their goal? Like, what are people's goals, and what was your goal in taking that, in being in that program?
I think, well, I mean, that's kind of the dream for a lot of people because they feel like, oh, if I can do it on Broadway, then I can do it anywhere. This is a very, very international program. So I think
Mm,
some people don't have any intention of doing Broadway, but they want to go back to their home country. I mean, we had people from, no joke, we had obviously Brazil, Kenya, Ghana, Iceland, Saudi,
wow.
South Korea, China, Mexico, Canada. I mean, obviously, well, UK, not obviously, but UK, Ireland. I mean, it was very, very eclectic group of
Mm,
people.
mm,
And so some people also want hope that they can do something on Broadway and then bring it back to where they live. Because
Oh,
then you can kind of, because some people say, well, then I can write my ticket here because they can say, oh, something was on Broadway. But some people
right,
have some people wanted to do uh, films, films
right.
with musical films, some just more like podcasts, or some people who did opera. I mean, it was really all
mm.
over the place. And I don't think you realize it until you've gone through the first year and then you've been exposed to all the different things that you could do.
So I'm
Um,
curious, like, is it because, so why is it, I guess what I'm trying to get at is the specificity of like musical theater writing. What is that? What is that draw? Why specifically musical theater writing?
for me or in general, or
I guess for you and in general, why are people gravitating towards musical theater writing? Because I guess in my head I'm thinking, okay, I guess if it's a music program, I can understand that.
Mhm.
Um, but it just seems so specific. And then I'm thinking, what is musical theater writing? Is it like, what is that? I don't know exactly.
I mean,
And I'm in it
really,
a little bit.
it's very specific. Now, of course, you start listening to some of the songs, and you will see,
Yeah.
like I said, it's wherever it should move it forward. It should move the story forward. What do they say when you can't when you can't talk, you sing. And
Mm-hmm.
like when you run out of words, then you sing because you can sing your thoughts, and that's what's so like the beauty of musicals to me. You suspend reality and you can break into song. But there's definitely a craft to writing musicals. There's a craft to how the songs work and the structure of the songs. There's um, a craft to the history. We learn a lot about the history of musical theater, and then they keep on saying these are the rules, there's rules, and then they give you all the examples of the musicals that break all the rules that have kind of been like you know the pioneers. So it
What
is
is
kind of
that?
an
What is
interesting.
that?
Oh,
What are
like
those musicals?
Oklahoma was very different for its time.
Hmm.
It was just
Uh-huh.
it was completely revolutionized things. Chorus line, very different. That wasn't then a traditional musical. Rent really changed the whole landscape. Then you have something like, well, Hamilton as well. I mean, it's just like something that kind of upend that. But if you really look at all those, even though I'm saying those are all different, but if you look at them, what they all have a story. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you people say you can have the best music and you can have the best, dialogue, but if your story is bad, your musical will fail.
You don't have a
Doesn't matter
Mm.
musical.
how good
Yeah.
your musical is, So you have to make sure that your story is really, really compelling and strong.
So one thing we've talked about on this very podcast, Veronica, is that it's very hard for like new original material to make its way into the
Hmm.
musical theater canon, for lack of a better term. I don't know what the
Yeah,
right term is, but it's like
that's the
this.
right term.
I mean, I'm just a ordinary audience goer, but from my perspective, there's an awful lot of musical theater that's like from ancient times, like just
Like
without naming
revivals?
specific names, like revivals, rehashes, redos. We're all familiar with the big names of the 7 or 8 shows that everybody has
Yep.
seen, and it's very
Hmm.
hard for a new one to come along. So, Kim, could this be one of those new shows?
Well, I think so because the
I
musical
think
I
so
mean,
too.
you have
I
to
think
believe
so
it.
too.
Yeah. I mean, so
Yeah.
why do they keep doing revivals? Why do they do like a jukebox musical? Why? Because of economics. It's pure
Yeah.
money. I
Right.
mean,
Sure.
and the thing is that it costs so much money to do a brand new musical, and so you can see a lot of musicals tend to be led by first named actors or performers, so
Right.
you
Yeah.
get the prominent names, or you get something, I want to say safe, or something recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have I think the world every once in a while is just ready for something new. I mean,
Yes.
think about
Mm.
what like Hamilton did. It just kind of broke everything. I sorry to keep using that, but that's probably the one of
No,
the
Right.
most
that's
recent
It's a good example.
yeah.
examples.
It's a good example
And
because it was something different. It had this. It was a rap component to it. There was a
mhm,
historical component to it. American
right,
history was big. So yes, and that's why. And I'm just gonna I'm not saying this to be gratuitous, but I think you might be onto something here, Kim, because this
thank you.
show has also got something very unique. It's got, without spoiling it for everybody, it's got a lot of elements that it's something different. It was based on, there was like an after school program. I gather that a lot of this Barba's work in Brazil. Now
Hmm.
there's a big scene, and I'm not giving anything away here because the Bronxnet video actually showed it. There's a scene where his team performs at the Olympics
Hmm.
in Rio,
They were in the
right?
2016 Olympics. Yep.
Right.
Hmm.
But before it was that kind of a company, it was, I guess it might have been like an after school type program where he was working with kids. They allude to it in the body of the show. So there's that component to it, and there's singing, and there's dancing, and it's the high levels of costumes, and there's a love story that runs through it, and there's all kinds of things going on, and I see it as very original, and I think it's also so colorful and so diverse that it might just be the kind of story that really resonates with people. And it's got this wonderful originality to it that I really took to. And I also must tell you, this was an unbelievably touching performance that I personally attended. I was there on this. I think it was there for 4 days. It looks like a Thursday through Saturday. I think I
Hmm.
went to the last show. It was at this place called the Pregones Theater in the Bronx, which is
Mm.
like a local theater where they run an after school. I guess they have an after school program there. So I think I heard the
It's not there. They
uh,
do they do a program called the Beyond Revolution Latina does
Mhm.
a program,
okay.
and it so they rehearse different places. They normally
Okay.
most of it was held at the in Harlem at the National Dance Institute. That's where we had the
I see. Okay,
workshops.
but so
Hmm.
it's got a connection. It's got a connection
Hmm.
to, but it's local theater,
Yep.
and just the energy running through that place was unbelievable. It was electric. And then when this particular episode or showing was over, Barba's family actually came out, Veronica. and
Wow.
and it was, I'm telling you, it was so emotional. I've never seen a thing like it on any stage. And one of the characters in the play is Barba's sister, who is in a wheelchair.
Hmm.
I gather she's got some type of disorder. I don't remember. Maybe
Hmm.
Kim could fill in the cracks here a little
Hmm.
bit. Well, it turns out his sister was there that night, his real sister, and she's in a
Yeah.
wheelchair, and she comes out, and her brother comes, and Barbara's brother comes out,
Yep. Hmm.
and they, in Portuguese, read some words of thanks, and it was just overwhelming and touching,
Yeah.
and it was so fantastic. Um, and I think the authenticity of it comes through in the performances, Kim. And that's
Yeah.
why I think this could be, I know there's a lot more to it, and it takes a few more years of development and
Hmm.
investors, and there's a whole bunch of things I'm sure that are involved with bringing a play from way off Broadway to off
Yep.
Broadway to on Broadway to the
Mm.
road.
Yep.
But I think you've got the kernel of something there.
Mm.
So, Veronica, when you see auditions for it, run. And you better audition. That's the message your dad's giving. You better
Yeah.
audition for this. I'll be like, yeah, like I'll see your name and I'm like, okay,
Well,
yes. No.
this was
Um,
it,
Yeah, I
Well,
so
are you thinking in those terms, Kim? I mean, are you and Carlos ever having those kinds of conversations?
well, I think the reason we are as well is because of the director. His name is Luis Salgado, and he was like the original associate choreographer on In the Heights, and also he
Mm.
did the choreographer for On Your Feet, the Gloria Estefan musical. He's also done Luis Salgado, and then he's also um, done, he was an actor as well on Broadway and like Rocky and Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. He's been in movies like Enchanted and Step Up Two. I mean, he's done a
Hmm.
lot, and he's also been directing. But what he's been directing is kind of revivals, like you're saying. And this, I think, this piece, he heard about it from three different people. So we
Wow.
didn't write to him. Three different people told him about this show, and so
Right.
he's like, "This seems like hand in glove for me. Like it's a, it's so much about movement and music. It's a man who's like made of music, and then what
Hmm.
happens, which I'm trying not to, well, it's not giving away, but what happens when that gift, you have a gift for music and it's taken away? What do
Right.
you do? How do you cope with that? And so the fact that there's so much kind of buzz and interest at this stage is pretty remarkable. I
That's
just graduated in
amazing.
May.
Yeah.
I just graduated,
So
Carlos and I,
how did you get involved with him then? Just through people that knew people that knew people, and then they got all linked?
well, so one of the things they do when you're in school is they give you a 2-day actor lab. So they bring in professional actors, and then they'll
Hmm.
run, and you have 2 full days. They give you a director and a music director, and you sit there and you go over scenes and songs, and then they rehearse the songs, and then they pick one of the songs, and we performed it at Joe's Pub at the Public Theater in May. And so
Oh,
they
wow.
actually asked, yeah, so then we had two showcases because the class is so big. And then they
Right.
asked us if we could open both showcases. And then we still could perform our song because they were like, this is so cool. And then, of course, they made everyone in the
Okay.
class learn the body percussion. So everyone in our class had to be in our show too to do that. But what
Kim,
happens is
That's
somebody, oh yeah,
amazing.
so a
yeah,
quick timeline. Take me through
sure.
this step, a quick timeline from you met Carlos to the public theater to what I saw in the Pregones Theater in the Bronx.
Okay,
Months,
so
years? How did
oh
that
yeah,
shake out?
yeah. So we started working on the musical in basically September, or well, really the end of the summer of 2020, 2022. So we've been doing it for about 18 months. We've been doing this
Mm.
about 18 months.
That
So, but
actually is
you
a
work
shorter period of
full,
time than I thought.
yeah, so full time. So the year, our senior, our second year at school, we worked full time on this musical. We had some other classes outside, but we worked full time. They give you
Right.
3 advisors, and every week you come up with scenes and songs, and you're honing the story. But what had
Wow.
happened is in that actor lab, the music director saw it, and she went to Luis Salgado. So that's
I
one of the
see.
three people that went.
Got it.
Amazing.
So if you say we started really in earnest in September of 2022, then we worked on it all of 22, 23. We graduated in May of 23. May of 2023, we performed these two numbers at Joe's Pub, and then we had a bunch of people saw it, and then we started having more interest. And I think that somebody who saw it there talked to Luis Salgado as well. And then by May, in the summer, Luis was like, I want to have a play date in October. Then the Latine Musical Theater Lab, they
Mm-hmm.
heard
Hmm.
about us, and then they um, asked us to be part of their reading series. And so we did a reading with professional actors in October. And
Wow.
then Luis got together a group of professional, like, and semi-professional dancers, and he wanted to see how hard it was to teach the material, and he wanted to see what Carlos could do. And we brought 6 people. We brought like somebody from Stomp because we knew somebody from Stomp from 10 years. We brought a body percussionist, and then we brought people from our class that knew the body percussion. And
Right.
Luis brings in professional dancers, and we spent the day experimenting. And at the end of that day, he was like, yeah, I like you guys, and I think this is going to go somewhere. And then he has this theater booked. We do auditions in November of 2020. Where are we? 2023. We did
3.
auditions. Yeah, so we had about 95 people who applied to be in this program. And what it is a
Wow.
2-week workshop where they get free classes and they learn acting, performing, dancing, and then they happen to learn body percussion. And
Wow.
then all from that group of people, they had 60 people that made it into the program, and of those 60, then they pick the cast from there. And then they are the people who were in that show. So the
And
people who
so,
could do that.
just to wrap up now, that cast had a combination of volunteer people and professional actors.
Really, they were all volunteers. They were all volunteers.
Wow.
The only real professional, I mean, Carlos's wife, because she was Danny in the show.
Yeah.
She's a professional, but she also, most of her career is in Brazil. So she's, now here. She speaks fluent English and Spanish and Portuguese. But yeah, it was a workshop that they get, free training, and then in
Right.
exchange for that, they can do they can do the performances. It's kind of like if you
Wow.
have a school project and at the end you're performing. But it was
Yeah.
amazing because all the shows sold out. Everything sold out.
The show
Wow.
I
So
saw,
now
I
you're
saw was sold
taking
out.
it. So now you take what happened this weekend, and what are the next moves for this? Do you continue to workshop it? Are you interested in you fine tune things? Like what are the next steps?
It's a combination. So one is I'd love to fine tune things. This is amazing at this stage to see things
Hmm.
off book, like
Right.
oh, with costumes and projections and lighting and smoke, haze or whatever.
Right.
It was like, this is just unheard of. But
Right.
I certainly would be like, oh, I'd love to rewrite some scenes and fix
Hmm.
some things. But the biggest thing what we need at this point is we need producers, and
Mm.
we would love a theater that would say, you know what, I want to develop it. I want to, you know, be the home of it to get this, off of its feet. And the problem is that you'd have to pay professional actors, and that's extremely expensive. And then
Hmm.
also the whole support team, the creative team around it.
Right.
So,
So
but
next
Something
step
tells me,
is
yeah. So
producing
the next step is
producers.
producing, yeah,
produce it
you,
and get some kind of a business infrastructure underneath it. And I have a feeling that this journey has only just begun for Barbara
yeah,
and for Kim Bixler. So I feel like I got kind of lucky to see that particular moment along the way. But I hope that there's going to be many more for you, Kim, because it's a great show. It's a great story. It's a great showcase for Latino and Latina actors
yeah,
and dancers. By the
hmm
way, there's that layer as well, which we didn't talk about that much, but that's kind of a big thing.
hmm
And I wish you all the luck in the world.
I mean, and have you ever seen a Brazilian musical? I mean, no one's
No,
seen that on Broadway.
no, and
Time is
No.
no.
here.
And
It's
when I
time.
heard that
It's
that's what
time.
it was going to be, I was like, oh, I don't speak Portuguese. I'm not going to understand this very well. And it
Yeah,
didn't matter because the music was fantastic and the dancing was
yeah.
fantastic. The
Right.
story was interesting and kept me engaged, which I get bored easily, and I wasn't the least bit. It was a great show. It was
Thank
just a
you.
great show. It was
Thank
a
you.
totally loaded with energy. And then the icing on top was this was a very special moment, for the family and
Yes.
all the people
hmm
involved. So it
Yes.
was really something to see. And that theater is a great place, the Pregones Theater. I didn't really know it was there. It's not that far from where
Yep.
I live. And I'm going to try and see if they have other things. So listen, Kim, thank you for coming on here today and talking a little bit about Barba,
hmm
which
Thank
is
you.
Brazilian body percussion musical theater. And I think it's on its way to a larger stage.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's going to do it for the Stern Spiel, Veronica. Anything else up your sleeve this week?
No.
All
No,
right.
yeah. Thank you so much for talking to us, Kim. This was so interesting. It was
Yeah,
really
well,
nice to meet you.
next week we'll have to go
Thank you.
back to talking about, Veronica's trials and tribulations as a road performer.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
know. I'm sorry. I don't have any trouble talking, so I'm sorry. I was like
Oh, no, 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 no.
going
Oh,
the
this
whole
was
time.
This was
about you.
Oh,
fantastic.
Today was
oh,
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah,
Don't
today was
even
about
worry.
you.
yeah.
Next week we'll go back to talking about, what happens if you order a salad and they put on pecans instead of walnuts.
Uh-oh. You
That's more
allergic?
typical.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
allergic.
Oh my gosh. Oh
I
yeah,
know.
yeah. But we
Thanks
end
again.
up when yes, thank you, thank you.
No, no, no. You were going to say. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying that when we were staying when I because I live in Los Angeles, so for 5 weeks I had
Right.
to be in New York, and we were
Mm.
living in this apartment. This woman is on the national tour of the Wiz, so it was just kind of interesting. So so it was nice to know so Carlos and his wife and I lived in this apartment for
Uh-huh.
the duration of all of the development of
Uh-huh.
Hey, Veronica,
Barba.
did you audition for that one at some point?
No.
Okay. But I do. I have one quick anecdote for you. One of the actors, one woman who was in Barba, was saying that she was auditioning for something. I assumed in Times Square, from what she was describing, at what kind of places that you go to all the time, Veronica. And I guess she didn't get the part, but she heard
Yep.
that there was this music booming through the wall in another one of the audition stages. We know what that's like, right? You've experienced that. And she went around the corner to see what it was, and it was they were auditioning for Barba, and she
Oh.
Yeah.
auditioned on the
Oh,
She was a
on the
wow.
spot. She auditioned. She got the role,
Yep.
and she was
She was
great.
auditioning in for a Lion King. I think it was like
Okay.
Crystal. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the name of it. But she, because I was like, she had no idea what it was. She had no idea what this whole thing was. She just walked in. She said, "I just bombed that Lion King audition," and I was like, "I'm just going over there,"
That's
because she
like
said,
the ultimate New York story, isn't
"Yeah,
it?
Yeah.
yeah,
That's amazing.
she's wonderful.
And the moral of
She's
the
really
story is,
wonderful."
don't give up because you never know what might be in
Yep.
the next room or right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Kim
Yep.
Bixler,
Awesome.
thank you again for being our guest on the Stern Spiel.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
All
Thank
right, bye
Bye.
you. Bye
everybody.
bye.